Now for business news with Ropiwa Madzena. And Ropiwa, you've got the latest on this Dis-Chem letter that was circulating, talking about putting certain people of certain colours in certain positions and not hiring others, and it's been an absolute uproar. That letter's now been withdrawn, am I right?
It hasn't been withdrawn, Selene. I mentioned it in my intro. Dis-Chem actually says we regret the wording and the tone of the internal memorandum. So they don't indicate that they've actually withdrawn the decision that has been made. Yeah, that's right. So that is the clarity that they've provided there, in that while Dis-Chem has come under a lot of fire from various organizations, including Action SA leader Herman Mashaba, the Black Management Forum has welcomed the company's latest move. Now, this follows an internal letter sent by Dis-Chem CEO Ivan Saltzman. In the leaked memo, Saltzman told management that Dis-Chem was placing a moratorium on the appointment of white staff in the company. Now, late this afternoon, Dis-Chem tweeted a note saying that it regrets the wording and the tone of the internal memo, and that it was erroneously and widely shared. Now, Esethu Mancotywa, who is BMF's Acting President, joins us now to unpack this further. Very good evening to you, Esethu. And maybe let's just start with your comments that you made as BMF, and you cite the reasons that you support the decision by the company is that you've seen that there's been very little in terms of strides being made when it comes to the Employment Equity Act. So maybe just talk us through that and the support that you have shared with us today.
Well, I think it's actually quite unfortunate that after we shared our support, probably yesterday and on Saturday, that Dis-Chem has now retracted the memo. So on our first reading of the memo, whilst we felt that the tone of the memo was...
Before you finish your thought, in the letter that they shared with us today, they say they regret the wording and the tone. So let's assume that they have yet to completely disregard or take back what they said last week.
Okay, well, we actually welcome that, because we were quite disappointed with the impression that the tone was, a letter was actually retracted. But if they're only talking about the then if they still stand by what they said in the initial letter, then that makes us a little bit more comfortable. Look, we welcome the initial letter that was sent by the Dis-Chem CEO to its leadership. However, we did feel that it was almost like the CEO had a gun to his head, and his only worry was really the 10% revenue penalty that he would face if they failed to transform, because they are a JSE-listed company. So initially, we were not particularly excited about the tone of the letter, but we, as an organization, we believe that if BEE needs to be forced down people's throats, then that's just simply what must happen. And that's what we felt was happening. We felt that perhaps the CEO is not really committed to transformation, but because of the rules of the JSE and the BEE Commission, he's being forced really to commit to transformation. And for us, people who don't really believe in transformation need to be forced into transformation. And that for us was okay, you know, whilst we did note that there was some tonnage in the letter that was not particularly supportive of transformation from a fundamentalist point of view. What we have seen on social media from the time that the letter was issued is really, I think I would say, white South Africans really rallying against this. And saying that they will no longer support Dis-Chem. I think that they're very kind of lost on what transformation really means, because they make up 10% of the population, and really Black, Indian, coloured people make up 90% of transformation. And so for a company to say that they are going to put a concerted effort to increase the representation of Black people in their management echelons, and to then have white people in South Africa really, as represented by social media, really kind of rally against this, really just points out that we are very far from understanding that transformation is a constitutional imperative, and that it's actually an economic imperative, because you can never actually have a stable, sustainable economy with the majority of the population not being invested in that economy. And so it's been really disturbing to see what has happened or transpired on social media from the time that this letter has been issued.
Yeah, that's a very important point that you raise, but a lot of the arguments that have been made since the circulation of that memo, Esethu, is that there's a difference between transformation and simply excluding a certain race just so that you don't have to pay 10% of your turnover because you're not following certain legislation. And I wonder what your thoughts on that particular argument would be, in that this is not transformation, it's rather excluding a certain race group so that you are meeting legislative laws in the country.
It's not excluding a certain race group. It's simply balancing out the inequalities of the past. So for us, any company that, when it looks at its senior leadership, or even the level below, which is middle management, and even junior management, any company that, when it looks at that, sees a high percentage of the 10% of the population and sees a low percentage of the 90% of the population, needs to ask itself whether it really believes in the transformation mandate. So for us, it's not something that is to be frowned upon, but it's really something that indicates that you are committed to redressing the inequalities of the past, and you are committed to having your demographic in your leadership mirror the demographic of the country. And so for us, it's not about excluding a certain race group, but it's about just believing in the transformation imperative. And as I said initially, the letter initially from the CEO seemed like almost malicious compliance. We always talk about why DEE should not be a tick box, or employment equity should not be a tick box, but should be really people believing that the demographics in their company should mirror the demographics in this country. And so for us, it's really not about the exclusion of a certain race group, but about really the transformation imperative that will result in, a redressing of the inequalities of this past. So that's why we commend Dis-Chem, even if it was done because they want to avoid a 10% penalty. We always speak about having the BE Commission and the EEE Commission having more teeth and having more harsh consequences against companies that don't want to comply. And if this is what it takes for them to comply, then we as the BMF fully support that.
No, thank you very much. Very insightful weighing in there from Esethu. She is the BMF Acting President, joining us to speak about the Dis-Chem memo that was circulated and, of course, the subsequent reaction that has followed. Let's